So we're finishing off the nitrogen cycle. This is the last part of the unit 1. We left off in class last talking about the sulfur cycle. So we're just going to finish off the cycles here. So the nitrogen cycle, well, nitrogen makes up 78% of Earth's atmosphere, and it's an essential component of our genetic material. So nitrogen is part of our DNA. The N in DNA stands for nitrogen, or nitrogen bases. So, however, most organisms cannot actually use atmospheric nitrogen. So we need nitrogen, but we can't actually use the atmospheric nitrogen, the nitrogen that's available in the atmosphere. And what's available in the atmosphere is N2, which is basically just nitrogen, a nitrogen molecule. So how we get it into us basically is we need bacteria, and the bacteria that exist in the soil are the ones that will change nitrogen into a version that we can use. So it says bacteria convert nitrogen gas, which is in the air, into ammonia through a process called nitrogen fixation. So all of that nitrogen that's around in the air, if we look here, oops, maybe this is not going to work. Oh, my Apple Pencil is dead. Okay, well, I'll just keep going here. So it says this ammonia in the air is then transferred to the bacteria in the ground. So you see that right here, nitrogen-fixing bacteria. That bacteria changes it into ammonia, which is NH3. So we're following this arrow here. Then the ammonia is converted into NO2 and NO3 by other types of bacteria. So nitrifying bacteria is what they say. So they change it into NO3 and NO2. So in the form of NO2 and NO3, plants can actually use that nitrogen, and plants need that nitrogen to stay strong, to grow. So it's really important that the plants get it. So that bacteria in the soil, super important, because without it we wouldn't have nitrogen in the plants, and then the plants wouldn't live, and then we wouldn't live, and you know how it goes. So we really need that bacteria in the soil to fix that nitrogen, make that nitrogen in a way that we can use it. It says animals can only obtain nitrogen by eating plants. So the only way we get nitrogen is through eating plants. That's why this bacteria is important to us, because it needs to get to the plants so then it can get to us. So we eat those plants, we eat the lettuce, we eat the whatever, and that gives us the nitrogen that we need to build our DNA. And why we need it for our DNA is because, well, we're always repairing ourselves, we're always making new cells, so that's why we need to continue to add nitrogen into our body. So it's just in our diet. Excess nitrates in the soil are converted back into atmospheric nitrogen by a different set of bacteria, and this is called denitrification. So if we create too much NO2 and NO3 in the soil, then this other bacteria will convert it back into N2, and the cycle will continue. So it's just a big long cycle basically of bacteria converting nitrogen to a way we can use it. We use it, we put it back into the soil obviously when we die, but in general we're just using it in our bodies, but majority of it is coming from the atmosphere and being converted by bacteria. In this picture you also see lightning. I don't know if it talks about that. It doesn't look like it. Lightning is actually another way that it can actually change nitrogen. So when a lightning strikes, it can change nitrogen from N2 to a way that plants can use it. So places that have lots of lightning, thunder and lightning storms, they might have more plants generally, just because, well, there's obviously lots of water, but there's also, they're getting nitrogen from lightning. So that's really the only way outside of bacteria that we can get nitrogen from the air into a version that plants can use. So how do we maintain the nitrate levels? Nitrate is NO3 in the soil. It says fertilizers may add nitrates to the soil, but they are only temporary and costly solution. The addition of nitrogen-fixing bacteria through the crop cycling ensures a continuous supply of nitrates. So nitrogen-fixing bacteria are often found in association with the roots of legume plants, such as clover and alfalfa. So clover and alfalfa are what we would consider a great cover crop. They are ones that when we're not growing something in the soil and we want to, get the soil nutrients back to a level that is good for growing in the next season, we would put in a cover crop like clover or alfalfa, and that would start to help create that nitrogen-fixing bacteria and encourage the soil levels to get back to the nutrients that they need to grow other crops. So the bacteria convert nitrogen into ammonia for the plants, and the plants provide the bacteria with sugar produced through photosynthesis. So they have a nice symbiotic relationship is what we would call it, so they helping each other out. The last cycle I believe that we go over, is phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is an essential nutrient. It's a component in our bones and our teeth, but it's found in limited quantities within the environment. Phosphorus does not cycle through the atmosphere. Instead, it's found in soil and water and often added to crops as fertilizer. Weathering gradually releases phosphorus trapped in rocks. So phosphorus doesn't really cycle through. It's mostly, it does cycle through in a geologic time, but that's millions of years. In general, phosphorus is found in rock, and that rock needs to slowly degrade over time so that it can be released into the soil. So we definitely don't have a lot of phosphorus in the soil. There's some phosphorus in animals, obviously, because it's in our bones and in our teeth. So that going back into the soil will add some phosphorus, but in general, it's a very long time until the phosphorus is released. While animals can obtain phosphorus by eating food such as milk, grains, and meat, plants can only use phosphorus in the form of phosphates, which dissolves readily in water. Although the scarcity of phosphorus keeps the growth of producers in check, it also limits the growth of crops. Large amounts of nitrates and phosphates can be harmful, leading to the overgrowth of algae called an algal bloom. So if we add too much, phosphorus is definitely not abundant in the soil, so we can add phosphorus and we can add nitrates by putting in fertilizers. And fertilizers are good if they're helping us grow our crops, but when it rains and brings those fertilizers into bodies of water, things like this picture could happen. So basically algae will start to grow. I don't know if you've ever seen it in a lake, probably maybe in the summer, not somewhere you would like to swim really, it's all slimy. But that algal blooms will take over. It looks gross, but it's also really bad for any other species living there because it'll take away the oxygen in the water. So fish and other aquatic species, they'll not have as much oxygen available because the algae is sort of taking it over. Right, so that's the phosphorus cycle. That's the 3 cycles that we talked about. And I'll post these 2 videos on the Google Classroom so you can check them out. But we're not going to really look at this last topic here. That's as much as we go into in this class. All right, so that is the very first unit. Be looking to the end of the week and finding a quiz on this or a little test. They're all open book, but something that you can do. And I would like you to pass in, if you can, as soon as possible, the topic 1 and 2 reviews for this, as well as doing that quiz. Okay, so that's your first unit, and we'll continue on to unit 2 probably tomorrow.